there is still like a level of, we don't value what women do in this arena the way that we value men. The coverage of such a milestone has been so subpar, and it tracks. Man, listen, when we talk about raising the bar and setting the standard, there are a few people I think that come to mind, specifically from a coaching standpoint. I think when we talk NFL, you think best coaches, greatest coaches, you got to go, first Bill Belichick. That's, one of the more recent examples. I think when you talk NBA, you hear Greg Popovich, you hear Phil Jackson, and in college basketball, you hear Coach K, you hear Pat Summitt, you hear Gino Auriemma. There is now a name who probably should have been in that conversation anyway, but now is undeniably in that conversation. And that's Tara VanDerveer at Stanford University, who just this past week became the all-time winningest coach in NCAA history, men's or women, after the Cardinal defeated the Oregon State Beavers 65-56 at Maples Pavilion. And I was so excited for Tara because they did it big for her, right? They had former players were there. Nneka Ogwumike was there. Shanae was there. Roz Golden-Woode was there. Like, there were players that were there to celebrate her. They had a whole ceremony for her. Now, I was a little upset that this was on the Pac-12 network, which isn't a network that is readily available for everyone. But I just love that they took the time to celebrate her, because if you know anything about Coach VanDerveer, she's not someone who really takes the attention, right? It's all about the players. It's all about a program. That's who the focus should be on. But to see her have a moment where she celebrated winning 1,203 career wins, first win happening in December 1978. I mean, I wasn't even born in 1978. So this woman's been winning since before I was. Matter of fact, my mama probably went but like 10, if that, in 1978, okay? So she been winning, okay?
Right.
I just think it's an amazing accomplishment. And I think about when you have to rank, or when you think about, some of the greatest coaches in our game, I think everyone's going to have who they feel are the little elements that make their coach what they feel to be the best coach or the greatest coach. But when it comes to winning, there is now no question of who that number one spot belongs to, Martin, and that's Tara VanDerveer.
Yeah, I'm really excited that we get to hear her name ring much, much louder now. And I look forward to, even personally, I've obviously known about her, very aware of her. She's been winning for 38 years. She's been there for 38 years. Since when you hear about a head coach being there that long and winning at that rate. So it's not just longevity. I mean, she's been National Coach of the Year 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
5 times. Like, we're talking about one of the premier college basketball coaches ever. And personally, I look forward to, even for myself, learning more about Tara VanDerveer and her story and her background. You see the success and the greatness and the wins from afar, but like, even personally, and I know we'll get into this, but I just, I can't help but think, like, if this were Gino, who's like, he's like 7 wins behind her, right? He's kind of trying to catch up to her. So they're kind of in a longevity race. If this were Gino, I feel like we'd be seeing way more stuff around this, way more graphics on social media, just way more stuff. And I think that speaks to a few things, but I love what you mentioned, Tarika, because just from afar, it does seem like, and I love this about Coach VanDerveer, she seems like the type where she's just content. I listened to what Roz Golden-Woode said about her and how she checks in on her. And just, I mean, I'm sure Tara VanDerveer ain't losing a drop of sleep at night thinking about people not giving her enough credit or not enough praise. I think she is so grounded in the players, her legacy, the people that she's impacted in her career. And of course, the winning is great, of course, but she's only won because she clearly has high character. You can tell from just how she carries herself. So I think that's one of the coolest things to see.
The other thing that really stuck out to me from Roscoe Martin is when she said, when I was getting recruited by Stanford or when I came here, Tara said, you're not making a 4-year commitment. You're making a 40-year commitment, right? That right there says it all. Like I am developing young ladies, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not just developing players or coaching them. I'm working on them on and off the court. And you don't always get that because some programs, some coaches, their mission just to win as many games or whatever, and that's it. After your eligibility is done, see you later. Tara VanDerveer is not that. She is a pioneer of the game. You know, we talk about the 1996 Olympics team, right, that went undefeated. That was huge for their growth for the women's game as well. Like she's coached Dawn Staley, Rebecca Lowe, all these amazing talents who have now gone on to do even greater things in their respective professions. So I have nothing but respect for her, and also just underscores how she's been able to adapt to the different times, because you don't stay somewhere for 38 years and continue to win without adapting.
Yeah.
And even if it may not be something you like, you figure it out. You know what I'm saying? You figure it out. It's the moment happened. And then we got just, I feel, a very basic level of appreciation for what she just did. The feature story, okay, little intro here, the highlights, interview on mainstream networks, and then that was it. Tarika, if we talk about it, if this was Gino, or hell, when Coach K became the all-time winningest coach in men or women's basketball history, it was a bonanza.
We
right?
talked about that for days. Like, I worked at ESPN at that time. Not to say that I don't work there now, but I'm saying I was there. And I was one of the ones to this day who can spell Mike Krzyzewski with my eyes closed. Okay? Because I wrote that name so many times across ESPN radio, across all of these captions, across social media. I wrote that name so many times that I now know how to spell this man's name that sounds absolutely nothing like how it's spelled. Okay. I saw people who have an attachment to women's basketball celebrate her. I saw a few social media graphics celebrating her. We already mentioned that it was on the Pac-12 network. Now, in my mind, if this is a milestone game, I felt like it should have been a game that was nationally covered, even if it was against Oregon State, where Oregon State isn't one of the best teams, but the Pac-12 is certainly the best conference in women's basketball right now. They've got 4 teams in the top 10 rankings, and no other conference has that. You know what I mean? So I think that on that alone, we can see that no matter how much we are content on trying to grow the sport of women's basketball or women's sports in general, there is still like a level of we don't value what women do in this arena the way that we value men. The coverage of such a milestone has been so subpar, and it tracks with so many other things that we've seen. Because she's not a coach that commands the room in terms of she's not someone that's going to come in and have that pregame speech that you're going to look at and be like, oh my God, I am so hyped because Tara just got me lit. She's not a Dawn Staley, right? She's not Dawn walking the room and you like, I'm about to suit up right now.
Right. Yeah.
Because Dawn has been told me it's going down. Like, she's not that coach, but in the very same essence, she is that coach. I mean, before she was at Stanford, she was coaching at University of Idaho. She was coaching at Ohio State. This woman coached the 1996 Olympics team, the same team that not only won gold, but we have won 7 straight golds since then. We have also have created the longest standing singular United States women's team, which is the WNBA, based off what she was able to help Team USA do in 1996. And so the respect that she garners doesn't really feel like it's understood across mainstream media. And it's unfair, but it's so common. And we talk about it all the time, Chris, for sure, because we're in these conversations, but at some point it just feels very disrespectful. We should still be talking about Coach Tara VanDerveer. We should still have specials about Tara VanDerveer. People should know about Tara VanDerveer. This week should be dedicated to people understanding how can you imagine being a coach that has never ever been on the hot seat? Tara ain't never been on the hot seat.
Never.
You don't know what it means to be on the hot seat. Stanford wasn't hardly thinking about letting her go. Like, this is the kind of coach that she is, but because she's a woman and because she's coaching in a sport that just 2 years ago was being exposed for not even having the same facilities as the men do on their side, we don't hear enough. We get the one day and that's it. And I just think it speaks to, sports are often a microcosm of the larger issue. And the larger issue of society at whole is they don't value women and they don't value women's sports. And we can see that in how she was celebrated outside of the circle of the Pac-12. Even if you were to Google right now, Tara VanDerveer, and see what pops up, you'll see tons of independent or off sites and writers that have written about her. You might see, I think the first thing you might see is a Sports Illustrated article and maybe CNN. And then after that, it's all independent because what are we doing? Like, the coverage is just not there. And it is very disheartening.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right.
Go ahead, Martin. Guys, I remember coming up watching Coach Stringer's teams at Rutgers, and I remember finding out that Coach Stringer was the first coach to take 3 different programs to the Final Four. She took Cheney, Iowa, and then she took Rutgers twice to the Final Four.
Sure did.
And then Rick Pitino, sometime after Stringer did it, Rick Pitino eventually did it with 3 different programs. He's the next coach to do it on the male side. And man, when I tell you, I remember I'm watching games, I'm seeing graphics on TV, on ESPN. I'm like, yo, where is the mention of Stringer? Like, I know this history. I saw it. I know it. I'm like, she's the first one to do this. Man, when Pitino did that thing, you would have thought he was the first one to do it. And they might have a little blurb, the little asterisk at the top in small font, like, Coach C. Vivian Stringer, Rutgers was the first, But it's like, yo, this is the time to bring that back up, pay homage, and make sure that people know. So it really speaks to that sense of the disparity between how we celebrate the women in our sport versus the men. And I'll say this, going back to, because Tarika said so much great stuff, and I kind of go back to with Coach VanDerveer. In this society, especially now, the world we're in, where we care so much about brand. And again, Tarika really spoke to it, I think, with Coach VanDerveer's like personality, because I think that really contributes to it. When you look at, the Stanford is a successful basketball program. They've been winning, right? But somehow, I don't know, when you think Stanford, you're still not necessarily thinking like basketball program. The UConn women's basketball brand, right, for all kinds of reasons, great players, right, Gino, and all kinds of reasons. But I think we associate so much with these brands that kind of plays into it as well. And so that's why, again, I go back to that, the fact that I appreciate that Coach VanDerveer seems to just not be even caught up in all that, like at all. I mean, it's so humbling and it's so refreshing to see that the all-time winningest coach, and not to say that if it were someone else, it would be worse, or other people have egos that we can't tolerate or whatever. I'm just saying, like, it's really refreshing to see that genuine kind of spirit of like, yeah, it's Stanford, it may not be who you want it to be or who you think it is, but